Hey everyone, I'm back already with one last video ahead of D23, but this one, as the title suggests, is less about an attraction or theme park land or a cruise ship and more about a person. Disney is finally honoring perhaps the greatest Imagineer of this generation, Joe Rohde, at this year's D23, inducting him as a Disney legend. And not only is Rohde known for his signature earring hardware, but he worked at Imagineering for more than 40 years, beginning with the Mexico and Norway pavilions and Captain EO at Epcot, as well as Disney's new Fantasyland, before forever earning his spot on the Imagineering Mount Rushmore with pretty much all of Animal Kingdom, as well as the addition of Expedition Everest, Disney's Aulani Resort in Hawaii, the Adventurers Club, Pandora, the World of Avatar, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout at Disney California Adventure, which opened on the exact same day as Animal Kingdom's Pandora, something that we do not talk enough about. He was also the inspiration and/or model for Harrison Hightower at Tokyo Disney Sea's Tower of Terror. He played the Dreamfinder at one point and more. And technically, he was the lead developer for Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point back in 2020. But since he announced his retirement that same year and then officially retired in January of 2021, I don't blame him for that. Anyone who's seen Lighthouse Key knows that's not Rohde's work, so I am personally striking it from his record. But what I wanted to share ahead of D23 this weekend is an interview Rohde gave about him being inducted as a Disney legend, and where he reflects on his career and gives some truly fascinating statements about his unique and current views on Imagineering. And honestly, anytime Rohde speaks, it's worth listening to. His Instagram is legendary amongst Disney park fans, even though a lot of what he says is so deep it goes over my head. But to this day, I cannot think of Main Street USA or the Disney parks without thinking about his mini Instagram TED Talk on placemaking, the eternal return, and perfectly encapsulating why we can't stop going to the Disney parks. So I want to share some excerpts of his interview while also showing off different areas of the parks where he's contributed. The full interview can be found on the Walt Disney Company's website. And then I want to dig into what this could mean for his possible future with Imagineering, since he's kind of back, and what we could hear and see from him at D23. So the first answer he gave in the interview that really caught my attention is when he was asked about Animal Kingdom and how he was instrumental in creating that park. Rohde first credited former Disney CEO Michael Eisner for Animal Kingdom before breaking down his own position in creating it, saying he was the chief spokesperson and negotiator for the project, the one who had to do the talking not only to explain it, but to enlist supporters, advocates, and advisors. So basically, he was a salesman as much as he was a visionary. But here's what I really found fascinating. He went on to say that the research to create the parks, the zoological rules and requirements, creating animal habitats, in all that, in the end, he and his team had to redirect the design and production skills of Imagineering towards a style that was less fantasy and more photorealistic. And that is certainly true of Animal Kingdom and Aulani. The magic in those places comes from what's real, not what's fictional or fantasy. But apart from that statement, his next comment is what really caught my attention, and that is as follows. That experience bred into me and my teams a strong bias towards presenting all projects, not so much as exciting opportunities that might be possible, but as rational investments that were possible and were also exciting, but doable first. Sort of a reduced focus on pure blue sky and more like trying to outsmart the analysis so the proposal could be both rational and surprising at any given moment. Less, wouldn't it be cool if, and more, this makes perfect sense and it's amazingly cool. So after 2022's D23, the term blue sky kind of became a dirty word amongst theme park fans because Josh D'Amaro and Imagineering only floated blue sky ideas with no guarantees they would ever be built. So I don't know if Joe Rohde had that in mind when he said blue sky in this interview, but I like his strategy, and it is different than what we've seen from Imagineering in recent years. And I like how his approach is to start with, this makes sense, here's why it'll work. As the interview went on, he was asked about Expedition Everest and Pandora, Some may remember that Bob Iger kind of criticized Everest pre-pandemic for its lack of IP, which did not sit well with Rohde. Well, Rohde once again shared his love for the attraction, the Himalayas, how realistic the ride in its area is, and some behind-the-scenes stories, like getting to be inside the structural interior of the mountain while it was running. He described it as a forest of gigantic pieces of steel, massive steel ride track columns, and spider webs of architectural steel, like some science fiction cathedral. In a way, it's too bad guests can't see that because it's very impressive. As for Pandora, well, Joe was incredibly honest and clearly felt the same way many fans, myself included, felt when it was first announced. And he admitted that I was terrified of this project when it began and certain that it would be the disastrous end of my career. It's a matter of public record that I wrote multiple memos to the company advising them not to acquire the property because it was so impossible to build out of real material in the real world. But in the end, it ended up being one of my favorite projects. I very much enjoyed working with the irreplaceable John Landau, whom I will miss terribly, and had wonderful long conversations with James Cameron, often about stuff that had nothing to do with the project at all, just history, science, and nature. He also describes several memories he has from working on Pandora, including realizing that the robotic shaman was able of a more convincing psychological performance they had realized. He also talked about realizing that Flight of Passage was going to be a more emotional experience than they had imagined, and that they had something that could be a game changer far above the technical achievement of getting it done in something like a real work of art. He also noted he enjoyed wandering around the landscape of Pandora as if it was a real national park. Finally, when asked how he wants to be remembered, once again, Joe Rohde noted that most of my career was occupied with projects that did not touch upon fantasy or animated characters. Even before Disney's Animal Kingdom, my work tended to be focused on exploration of what else Disney could mean. And after listing Pleasure Island, The Adventurers Club, Animal Kingdom Aulani, and more, he said, "There's just not a lot of classic IP in my portfolio. If I have a legacy, I suppose it is that to leave a body of work that shows just how much more and how much else Imagineers are capable of. And further, I hope that I have established a sense of discipline, deep study, and gravitas to the work. Over the years, I've come to believe that what we do is far and away the most complex and technically sophisticated art form in the world. No film, no opera, no theatrical or architectural enterprise comes close. It deserves intellectual sophistication that is equal to its technical sophistication." So, amazing words, and in light of his comments, especially in terms of his view of Imagineering, the question I'm asking heading into this year's D23 is whether this is an indication that he's actively involved with Imagineering again, or a clear sign that he's not. And I gotta be honest here, I feel like his words about his own career's lack of IP and the unrealized ability of Imagineering is opposite of the company's current direction. I just talked about Disney Cruise Line doubling down on its focus on IP for its upcoming ships. However, if he is back at Imagineering, and in more than just a mentorship role, this is the best sign that the Disney brass is open to listening to Imagineers and creatives and possibly shifting course. It also suggests that if he's involved with the overhaul of Animal Kingdom's Dino Land USA to the Tropical Americas land, as many suspect, the land's design, its theming, its cultural representation will be authentic, it'll be realistic, it will blend with pre-existing Animal Kingdom, which is what everyone wants, while still offering rides based on Encanto and Indiana Jones. In fact, I think a Joe Rohde Indiana Jones spin could be really interesting, and less like a treasure hunter and more of a conservationist take. Something to watch if I happen to be right. In fact, I've long thought that Harrison Ford being named a Disney legend in the same class as Joe Rohde could allow the two to take the stage during Disney's Horizons panel on Saturday and to talk about this ride, but again, that hinges on whether Rohde is actually back. Something that wasn't mentioned in Rohde's interview, and that surprised me, is his previous role as the global creative leader of the Marvel property and how he's responsible for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. If he is back, and as I've said previously, I can't think of any project better suited to Rohde, apart from Pandora 2.0, than a Black Panther Wakanda land for Disneyland. Wakanda is culture, its geography, its history, its message, and its marvel, all things he does incredibly well. Also, Disney Cruise Line's recent announcement that the Disney Destiny will have a Wakanda-themed Grand Hall is a sign that Disney is looking to do Wakanda on land as well. And then, like I said, there's the new Pandora World of Avatar coming to Disneyland and inspired by Avatar 2, The Way of Water. I confess I have no inside knowledge on this, but given Rohde's words about James Cameron and how they have shared interest outside the theme park land, it would not surprise me if Cameron was somehow instrumental in bringing Joe Rohde back. Knowing Cameron's style and how he practically prints money for the Disney company these days, I could see him calling up Iger, demanding Rohde's return to build another Pandora, and maybe, just maybe, that's why Iger was so non-committal about whether Disneyland's Pandora was going to be a land or experience, because he was waiting on Rohde. Again, this is just speculation, but knowing Cameron's style, it wouldn't surprise me. I think it's possible. And I should also note that James Cameron is also being inducted as a Disney legend this year, along with Joe Rohde and Harrison Ford. So, coincidence? Possibly, but possibly not. And I think even more so than Harrison Ford, James Cameron could appear with Joe Rohde on stage during the Horizons panel to break down their second vision for Pandora in the parks. So needless to say, one of the biggest and most anticipated questions for me now heading into D23 is Rohde's role and what it means for the future of Imagineering and the announcements that we already know are going to be revealed. So if you too are interested in what will be announced at D23 and in Disney park news in general, I would so appreciate if you would consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. I intend to cover as much of D23 as I can in the coming days, but regardless, thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you have a magical day.